Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. In this video, we are going to discuss our funding from the country study between Malaysia and Turkey on how they are using interest rate policy to stabilize currency. Currency exchange is one of the most important determinant of country's economy because it will affect the import, exports, the foreign direct investment, and demand and supply in general. Theoretically, the relationships between interest rate and inflation are negatively related. If the interest rate is high, the inflation will low, and if the interest rate are low, the inflation will increase. The reason why we are making comparison between Turkey and Malaysia for this case studies because both countries adopt floating exchange rate regimes and have Muslim population as a majority. Objectives of our study is to assess the effects of policies on currency stability and the world economy, to assess the relationships between the exchange rate and factors that influence it, and to propose possible solutions based on the Islamic principles.
We will now move on to the trend analysis between our first variable. That is the exchange rates comparing between Malaysia and Turkey. As we can see in this graph here, the blue line depicts the Malaysian ringgit, whereas the orange line depicts the Turkish lira. Malaysian ringgit has been quite stable throughout the years, from 2019 up until 2021. We can see in between where COVID-19 hit, the ringgit did fall in value to 1 ringgit equating to 23 cents US dollars. However, Malaysia started recovering and it jumped back to around 24 cents after the borders were open and the economy started running once again. Now let us move on to Turkey. We can see a declining trend in the Turkish lira over the years. First, it was at a decreasing rate, but then towards the end, it has seen that the decline is increasing. It's declining at an increasing rate. So what we can see is Turkish lira was declining from 2019. When the pandemic hit, the lira really lost. It went lower in terms of its value against the US dollars. We can see in 2020, the second quarter of 2020, 1 lira was equivalent to almost 15 cents US dollars. However, as opposed to Malaysia that sprung back after the pandemic, the Turkish lira continued to decrease in value until towards the end of 2021, we can see that it had fallen to around only 9 cents for 1 lira.
My name is Ainur Mariam binti Anwar. I will continue with the inflation trend in Malaysia and Turkey. In 2019, Malaysia have a steady inflation rate at below 2% as there is absence of the trigger factor that can cause the increase in the general price levels. Consumer Pricing Index data from Malaysia show that inflation decreased by 1.4% from a year earlier in December 2022 for a 1.2% decrease overall and achieve a full year deflation. Inflation rate has increased to just under 5% in April 2021. According to the DOSM, the factors behind this upward trend is driven by shortage of food supply, which lead to the increase in prices of vegetable and fruits. For the previous 3 years, Turkey's overall inflation rate has been constant around 10% to 20%, with a start off at 20.4% at the beginning of 2019, caused by increasing price of food and non-alcoholic drinks, health and recreation and culture, and managed to reduce the rate by the end of 2019 at 8.60% due to the still weak domestic consumption and stay constant until the end of 2021. However, by the start of 2022, Turkey experienced hyperinflation as the result of COVID-19 reopening of the economy. This inflation started at 21% and peaked at 80% by the end of 2022.
This graph shows the trends of export and import between Malaysia and Turkey from 2019 until 2021. For 2019, for both countries, there's no significant trends because at the time there was a pandemic and pretty much around every countries are experiencing economic slump. So there was lower import and export. And in 2020, as you can see in the graph, Malaysia in quarter 3 there is a gap between the export and import. This is due to lack of import from Singapore due to lower tourism products. And in 2021, Malaysia achieved an all-time high trade surplus as the economy started to recover from the pandemic. Malaysia in general has always experienced a trade surplus. Turkey, in contrast, has always experienced trade deficit. And in 2020, due to, as you can see, there is a significant changes in the trade. This is due to Lira recorded the lowest against US dollars in history. But sometimes around 2021, as the government continued their low interest rate policy, devaluation of Lira caused a hike in exports.
Next is foreign direct investment, a trend for Malaysia and Turkey. In 2019, FDI flows in Malaysia has been increased by 3.1% due to the higher injection of equity from Japan, precisely in the head activity, which make Japan as the major FDI contributors along with Hong Kong and Netherlands. For the next year, due to the COVID-19 outbreak that affected the world economy, it caused the country to have a contracted percentage in the net inflow by 44.8% due to the lower equity and investment fund share and higher loans extended to affiliates abroad. However, the government announced the opening of the economy in 2021, which led to a return to normal economic operation. A greater net inflow of RM48.1 billion in 2021, and Japan, Hong Kong and Singapore continue to hold the top 3 position for direct investment. For the Turkey FDI in 2021, Turkish foreign direct investment increased by 79% year over year. After starting from a low base in 2020, global FDI flows increased 64% to 1.85 USD trillion in 2021, led by a thriving merger and acquisition industry and a sharp increase in the foreign project finance because of the less financial condition and significant infrastructure stimulus program. In 2020, during a pandemic-related worldwide economic downturn, Turkey's FDI had fallen to roughly at 963 billion USD, a significant decrease from the post-global financial crisis low point. In Malaysia, the responsibility for formulating and implementing monetary policy is entrusted to Bank Negara Malaysia as the nation's central bank. The Central Bank of Malaysia Act 2009 states that one of the principal objects of BNM is to promote monetary stability conducive to the sustainable growth of the Malaysian economy. In promoting monetary stability, BNM is mandated to pursue a monetary policy which serves the interests of the country with the primary objective of maintaining price stability while giving due regard to the development in the economy. MPC Monetary Policy Committee of Bank Negara Malaysia is responsible for formulating monetary policy and the policies for the conduct of monetary policy operation. The MPC decides on the policy interest rate, the overnight policy rate, which is OPR, to influence other interest rate in the economy. In carrying out this mandate, the MPC determined the direction of monetary policy based on its assessment of the balance of risk to the outlook for both domestic inflation and growth. MPC will meet at least 6 times a year to decide on the OPR and publish the monetary policy statement following each meeting to explain its decision. And the next meeting will be held on 8 and 9 March of 2023. And lastly, for current overnight policy rate is at 2.75% as for 19 January 2023. And for the key monetary policy indicators consist of two elements, which are the headline inflation and GDP growth.
Now I will talk about monetary policy in Turkey. The reason behind high inflation in Turkey is due to the unorthodox beliefs of Prime Minister of Turkey, Erdogan. He believes that low interest rate will reduce inflation and boost capital flows. So the interest rate in Turkey will be adjusted by Central Bank of Turkey, and so the goal is to manage aggregate demand and inflation expectation by using interest rate policies and other monetary policy instruments to meet inflation target. And the interest rate cuts began in 2018. As you can see this graph, in 2019 it was around 19.7, which was pretty high at the time, and then the central bank continued to cut the interest rate continuously until 2020 for 9 consecutive rate cuts. And so suddenly at that year they realized that it's not really working and inflation is extremely high and worsening, so the bank reversed their decision by slowly starting to increase the interest rate. But sometimes around March 2021, the central bank continued its policy to lower interest rate, hoping to promote economic growth. So what the country benefits from it, Turkey has gained advantages from high export due to lira depreciation. So basically, it means that it's cheaper to buy Turkey's products, so many countries are buying from it. However, the higher cost of imports might affect the economy in the long run because Turkey heavily relies on imported inputs for their manufacturing sectors.
Let us look at some of the strategies that the countries used in order to reduce their reliance on interest rates. So firstly, Malaysia. It currently uses interest rates as a regulatory mechanism in the country. But, however, Malaysia is working on producing a parallel alternative through the development of its Islamic banking and finance industry. We see reforms in industrial practices. They're promoting value-based intermediation as an attempt to universalize concept from the Islamic principles and maqasid al-sharia within the economy. So more like using general terminology but having the Islamic principles as the basis of the policies. And lastly, they're trying to strategically work on reducing dependence on interest rates, not targeting them directly. When we come to Turkey and we see how they're doing it, since 2000, when AKP came to power, that was led by now President Erdogan, that was the mayor back then, he was the mayor of Istanbul. Turkey was experiencing economic growth and expansion. There was lots they were using interest rates as well to regulate the economy. Lots of foreign direct investment was coming in, and we could see that Turkey was growing. Later on, in 2017 up until 2022, and more so nowadays, that we see the condition of Turkey, as was explained earlier, that Turkey is directly trying to tackle the interest rates and is dealing with the interest rates as the greatest evil. So they have sort of tried to slice down the interest rates and tackle the issue head on. But the drawback is that the Islamic banking and finance industry is not developed to an extent in Turkey as yet that it can replace the conventional practices. And due to this, we see that the currency continues to plunge downwards and reduce in value. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, la ta'kulu riba ad'afa mudha'afa, which means, O you who believe, do not feed on usury compounded over and over, and fear Allah so that you may prosper. This is an ayah of Surah Al-Imran. And the Prophet of Allah, may peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, he has cursed the one who accepts usury, the one who gives it, the one who records it, and the two witnesses to it, saying that all are the same in terms of evil, reported by Muslim. Interest is by right, what interest does is basically it transfers the wealth from the poor to the rich, and it's so detrimental to society because it sort of exploits the needs of the needy, which is a source of financial enslavement. Here are some strategies that are suggested in order to move towards an interest-free economy that is prosperous and is able to grow. Number one, there is a need for increasing public awareness on the negative impacts of interest rates in an economy, because when there is education, people will want to opt for the alternative. Secondly, the profit rate benchmark. So there should be cooperation amongst Muslim countries to come up with a benchmark that can be used as an international in the international market for profit rate rather than the interest rate, and it can replace LIBOR, the interest rate that is currently used throughout the world. So we can have a profit rate rather than an interest rate. Also, policy making. So the governments can make policies that are upholding Islamic principles and that are rooted from the Quran and Sunnah, as well as they're fulfilling the objectives of the Sharia. This will ensure economic growth while being able to stay true to the teachings of Islam. In conclusion, the goal is defined, that is to create an economy that is based on Islamic principles and does not rely on interest rates as a regulatory mechanism. So what must be done? The steps must be chosen wisely. Why? Because the greatest strength of a nation is its public support and trust. When a government has public support, it will be very easy to achieve the goal. As long as there's dictatorship and the policies are being enforced without the understanding of the public, it'll be very hard for them to be on the same page. And remember, when everyone is united, reaching the goal is much easier. And lastly, we end off on the note that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, invite all to the way of thy Lord with wisdom and beautiful preaching, and argue with them in ways that are best and most gracious, for thy Lord knoweth best who has strayed from his path and who receives guidance. This tells us that whatever we want to implement, whatever we want to do, call towards the path of our Lord, it must be done with wisdom. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.